Playing a video game just as it is seems to be worth less and less every day. There's often a lot of blah 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 about the author's intentions regarding difficulty, but when it comes to coming up with challenges, it's the law of the jungle. However, that isn't a bad thing at all. It's nothing more than the reflection of our desire for different experiences, or to extend the lifespan of our favorite video games. Over recent years, social media has fueled a surge in no-death runs, completing a game without dying, and no-hit runs, finishing a game without taking a single hit, mainly in games like the Soul series or similar ones, as well as a rise in the popularity of mods for, well, almost any game you can imagine. Those concepts, however, are far from new. Pokémon Nuzlocke challenges and mods for games like San Andreas or Skyrim have been around for years. It's pretty clear that this trend has been on the rise, particularly with the ease of modifying games nowadays, or the millions of views that a new, fun and original game mode can attract. I've even programmed my own ROM hack in which you can buy Pokémon, which I may release to the public in the future. If you're curious about this twist, check out my Twitter. I'm sure you'll love it. All this discussion about challenge runs and mods is great, but if I had to choose the undisputed king of challenges in video games, or in general, I definitely choose those that have been around since ancient times: speedruns. As you may already know, speedrunning typically involves completing a video game as quickly as possible. I mean, at the end of the day, is there a more basic way of spicing up something than turning it into a race? After all, aren't the track and field events of the Olympics essentially speedruns of running a specific distance? If it's enjoyable to watch Usain Bolt sprinting for 9 seconds every 4 years, just imagine watching an expert of your favorite game complete it in under an hour, showcasing all sorts of incredible tricks along the way. Although, of course, not every speedrun simply involves completing the game as quickly as possible. From that core concept, various typical categories often emerge. Any percent, which indeed involves completing the game as quickly as possible, 100%, which entails completing the game as quickly as possible while obtaining all available content, lowest percent, which apart from a cool YouTube channel is precisely the opposite, a speedrun with the least possible amount of content, and then there are other typical categories like glitchless percent, a speedrun without exploiting any game glitches, as the name suggests. As I mentioned before, these are the standard categories found across all video games, but of course there are others that adapt to each game's unique mechanics and gameplay. In Breath of the Wild, you can do a speedrun to complete all the shrines, while in Ratchet and Clank, attempt one to fully upgrade all your weapons. But remember that ultimately this involves doing something as quickly as possible, and the examples I've given before are, so to speak, the serious categories. Because, of course, if there's one thing we humans excel at, is behaving like idiots. And something as demanding and deeply rooted in the community as speedruns isn't immune to it. That's why in this video, I'm here to talk about when speedrunning turns into a meme. When the goal of the race against the clock is to do something utterly ridiculous, and you wouldn't believe the amount of absurd categories that exist out there. Did you know that Link can smoke a joint? Or that you can see Mario's nipples? Or that Ratchet can make an NPC's breast grow? And it's not just that they can do those things, the community actually organizes races to do them, and it's precisely these kinds of nonsense what you're going to see in today's video. Welcome to the most absurd speedruns in video games, Memeruns. How about we start with some games that we've all played, such as Pokémon? Under certain circumstances, you can get yourself stuck in a Pokémon game with no way to progress. And well, some people have turned it into a speedrun to see who gets stuck first. And the funniest part is that it isn't even that difficult to achieve. You can get stuck in Professor Oak's lab wall in Pokémon Red, Blue and Yellow in less than a minute and a half. Or get trapped in the first town of Pokémon Diamond and Pearl forever, simply by losing a tutorial battle, which also happens in the remakes. Getting stuck in a Pokémon game is kinda funny, but if you click on this video, you're here to watch some real memes. Do you remember all the controversy surrounding the hot tub category on Twitch with people in pools? Well, you can complete a hot tub percent in Pokémon Emerald by getting into the hot springs with the 2 old ladies as soon as possible. And how about getting rid of a Pokémon character forever? Pokémon Ditch Build percent involves watching the scientist transform into an Nidorino and fleeing, abandoning the poor guy as a Pokémon for the rest of his days. But wait, because there are even more stupid ones. In Pokémon Sword and Shield, there's Pokémon Flex On percent, which simply involves finding a character, any character, and spinning in front of them until you do Leon's gesture. You can do it to your own mother, to Leon's Charizard. It's a huge nonsense, but it's really funny. But hold yourself, because things get even weirder from here. But because of the game's fault. Did you know that in the Diamond and Pearl remakes, there's a speedrun to crash the game and the record is 34 seconds? Or that in those same games there's a category to obtain all badges in reverse order? It takes just over an hour, and the funniest part is that they don't even have to face the gym leaders. It's crazy how broken this game was. But enough Pokémon for today. Let's move on to Minecraft, where we also find some very interesting speedruns, like Mine a Chunk %, which basically involves mining all the blocks in a 16x16 area. There are different cooperative versions depending on the number of players, but the solo record is 1 hour and 8 minutes. Tediously impressive for something so boring. Then there's even a more meme-worthy one called Sonic, Tails and Knuckles, where you have to dye 3 sheep the colors of the famous Sega characters, and the world record is 5 seconds. Wow, it takes less time than it took me to explain the category to you. If we fall into Undertale, there are some pretty clear memes. Firstly, we have Duck %, which obviously involves reaching the duck and flying away on it. Then we have something similar with UndertaleTemmie College, which involves paying for Temmie's college as soon as possible, and the world record takes less than half an hour. Next we have Ball Minigame, where we have to get the 7 colored flags by, you guessed it, playing golf. And finally we have Dance of Dog, which basically involves getting the screen of the dancing annoying dog, which shows up when our save file gets corrupted. Speedrunners achieve this during a normal game by reaching Sam's secret workshop and then restarting the game to make the little dancing dog appear. In Donkey Kong 64 we have F %, which you may think involves dying to pay respects or something along those lines, but it's simpler than that. You have to reach the giant piano as quickly as possible, and then press the large F key. In Dark Souls, we not only have the no-hits and deathless runs that we mentioned earlier, it also has its own Memeruns, such as Moan %. This involves defeating a boss, who is a giant woman, in one hit, which triggers a rather amusing glitch where she keeps moaning until you restart the game. Nice. There's a category that involves getting banned from an online platform as quickly as possible, like PlayStation Network, but none will be as funny as doing it in Club Penguin. The record is 56 seconds after logging in and saying fuck. Even if that sounds absurd enough to you, there's also Girlfriend %, which involves a random person agreeing to be your girlfriend, inviting her to your igloo and breaking up with her. It's like a scene from the best soap opera. Oh, and the world record, as unbelievable as it may seem, is 8 seconds. Ladies, watch out. If we leave penguins behind, we'll start thinking with portals. There are some pretty standard challenges, like 0 portals or no passing through portals, which, okay, I guess it's cool not to use the main mechanic of the game, but they pale in comparison to Airboat %. Yes, this portal speedrun involves using airboats instead of portals, but it isn't the worst of them all. Because there's also Cap %, which involves reaching GLaDOS while carrying the cap from the first room. And it might seem like a harmless and funny speedrun, until you break the cap, and you have to move all the pieces one by one, turning it into a torture. And speaking of torture, if we combine 2 games we've already talked about in this video, we get Portal Minecraft %, which basically involves doing a normal speedrun, but with the graphics at the absolute minimum. It makes you want to grab a pickaxe and search for diamonds. Moving on to ruining another of your favorite games, in the first Ratchet and Clank we have Boobs %. Yes, you heard that right, Boobs %. It's a widely known quirk that there's an NPC whose breasts grow to unimaginable sizes if we start doing side jumps. So it's exactly that, turned into a speedrun. You have to play halfway through the game and do 20 side jumps to make her breasts as big as possible, and the world record is 6.5 minutes. But let's move on from those airbags to others. Typically, when you play Mario Kart, getting hit by a blue shell when you're in first place is one of your biggest fears, and one of the biggest causes of broken friendships. Well, the Blue Yourself speedrun is precisely about that, but it can just be any blue shell. As the name suggests, it has to be one that you've thrown yourself, and that involves a series of insane calculations involving the distance to the first card, the time you've been racing, how long it takes to get into the first place after throwing it, but I better leave a video link in the description of the current world record holder, explaining in great detail how they achieve a record that's practically impossible to beat. Continuing with Mario games, there are dozens of meme speedruns, but the one I find the funniest is Mario Odyssey Nipple %. Yes, a nipple in a Nintendo game. And the speedrun is exactly that, seeing Mario's nipples by buying the swimsuit outfit as quickly as possible. Oh, and speaking about Mario's nipples, did you know that the texture of Mario's nipples takes up the same amount of space as the entire sprite of Mario from the NES? Some nipple culture for you. And now let's move on to another big Nintendo franchise, which also doesn't escape having the weirdest memes. Let's talk about the Dank percent of the Zelda series. Yes, I haven't gone crazy. In Ocarina of Time, there's a bug where if we glitch the game to burn a stick while playing the ocarina, well, I think it's pretty clear what it looks like. And thus, Dank percent was born. But don't think it's only possible in Ocarina, because in Breath of the Wild you can also achieve it by whistling while holding a torch. So, what do you think of Memeruns? Are you tempted to try any of the ones you've seen? Do you know or can you think of more? Feel free to leave your crazy ideas in the comments, and I think you've seen that the sillier, the better. If you've enjoyed the video, try speedrunning a like, share and subscribe, and then leave a comment with your time. If I see that you really like the idea of the video, I bring you a second part with even more Memeruns. I promise you I still have some of the funniest ones left. Thank you very much for your time, and see you in the next video.